Welcome to Technicians Tuesday, where we believe it is important for you to know what to do if you get on your boat and the engine won't turn over. You'll want to click that subscribe button and follow us on Instagram, because next week we'll be diving even further into this type of scenario and about what to do if the engine isn't even getting fuel. This week's contest prize is an OTC 100 amp battery load tester. This way you will be able to keep track of the condition of your boat's batteries. If you've been running a boat for a while now, then you know that things can always happen on a boat, leaving you with an issue to deal with. If you're a newer boater, you might not have had the joy of learning this yet, but eventually you'll jump on a boat, turn the battery switch on, hit that key switch, and the crickets will begin to chirp. So now what? Well, now we need to do a quick troubleshooting of the starting system. Technically, there are a ton of components that go to the starting system. If you want to include everything from the key switch to the computer to all the wiring and cables connecting all these components together. But over 75% of the time when an engine won't turn over, there are usually only 4 culprits to check out. 5 if you include the key switch, which does fail. These are the battery cables, starter solenoid or relay, and the starter itself. We need to start the troubleshooting out by using our load tester, and we can speed up this process and eliminate the battery cables and the battery all in one test. We'll do that by locating the positive and negative battery cables on the engine, hook up the ground clamp to any ground that is on the engine, then we want to hook up the positive clamp to the positive cable on the starter. Then we can apply the load and see what the tester reads. We'll hook up to the starter because that will test all the cables that go from the battery to the starter to provide the starter with the juice that it needs to turn the engine over. If we don't get a good reading here, then we can check directly at the cables on the engine, which is going to eliminate the engine and only test the battery and the cables. If that test also fails, then we'll go directly to the battery and load test the battery. This will let us know if we need to replace or charge the battery, or if there is something going on with the battery cables. Batteries do have a shelf life, so they do go bad, and also some of them need to be maintained. For more on how to take care of them and how to make them last longer, check out our video on how to get more life from your boat's batteries. Sometimes we'll get lucky and find a loose or dirty connection to be the issue. Otherwise, we can look for anything that is in line with the cables from the battery to the engine. And normally, you will only find a battery switch for the positive cable, or the boat might have power posts that are attaching the batteries from somewhere in the front or middle of the boat to the transom and then to the engine. Ensure that the battery switch and these power posts are clean, not loose, corroded, and ensure that the battery switch has not failed by not turning on and allowing the power to flow through it even when you turn it to the on position. After performing these tests and there is nothing wrong with the battery, connections, battery switch, or power posts, but we still have a bad reading with our load tester, then we know that the battery cables are the issue. Otherwise, whichever component that you find to be faulty after performing these tests, we can just change it out and be good to go, or move on with our testing of the starting system. We'll want to make sure that the starter is getting the right amount of voltage to enable it to turn on and begin turning over the engine. This is an easy check that is going to confirm that the starter relay is operating properly. There are many different types of relays or solenoids that come before the starter, which will also have another solenoid built into it. These operate by controlling the electricity. Our battery cables bring in the high power to turn the engine over, and the relay or solenoid is a way to control that high power with a lot less power. Whenever power is supplied to one side of the relay, it will allow the high power to flow freely on the other side of it, and then when we shut it off, it stops that flow, shutting off the opposite side. We'll just take our voltage meter here, and if you need a meter, I'll link to our resources page on our website in the description below so you can get one, and we'll connect our negative or ground meter lead to the ground. Then we'll take our positive lead to either the yellow and red wire or the brown wire that is going to the solenoid that is on the starter. Turn our meter to voltage DC and then hit the key switch to see what we have. We're looking for 12 volts or battery voltage. If we see that, then we can move on. But if we don't see it, we'll need to start backtracking to figure out why we don't have it. By backtracking, I mean that we need to now follow our wire from the starter and then check for that voltage on the other side of it, which is usually at another solenoid or relay. We'll hit our key switch and see if there is voltage coming out of the relay or solenoid. We'll also be looking to see if there are 12 volts sitting at the other side of the relay to flow through the relay to the starter when we hit the key switch. Now, different engines and manufacturers are going to have a different setup, wire coloring, and depending on the age and whether it is a 2-stroke or a 4-stroke engine, the systems will vary. It's just important to remember that the process and flow of the system is the same though. We just need to follow that wire back through the system until we get to the key switch, which is what initiates this entire process. 2 strokes will be easier than 4 strokes, and that is because we have the introduction of the computers and more wiring. A trick to be able to complete the troubleshooting process though is that we just need to follow the wire and wire color. 9 times out of 10 though, we find that it is either the relay or solenoid that is the issue, and if it's not, it's usually the key switch. So you shouldn't need to go much deeper than that. So this leaves us with only needing to test the starter and smash that like button. Before testing the starter, let us know about a time when you had trouble with your boat in the comments section below, and include a hashtag OTC for the load tester. Now when it comes to testing the starter, this is the easy part, and where we have another tip to testing your starting system and bypassing all of these other steps. For those of you that have been dealing with outboards for a long time can probably remember a time when you had to smack on the starter with a hammer or something to get it to start spinning. Well, sometimes we still have to do this, and it also works on trim units, and sometimes you can get them to work in a pinch when they get jammed up. For our starters though, we need to make sure that the Bendix is recessed into the starter and isn't stuck up in the flywheel. This is easy, we just need to push it back down into the starter. Then we can simply take our remote starter button, which is also on the resources page of our website, and connect the yellow, red, or brown wire on the starter to the power cable of the battery. Hit the button and see if the starter spins up and turns the engine over. We can also take a screwdriver that has a rubber or plastic handle on it that isn't going to allow electricity to flow into our hand and jump the solenoid the same way. If nothing happens, then you can bet that you need a new starter, or at least need to take this one off and disassemble it to see if you can clean the brushes or fix the solenoid if that is the issue. We can also turn the key switch to the on position if we want to start the engine, and then jump that starter again. As long as the engine is getting spark, has compression, and is getting fuel, it should fire right up. If you want to know how to check these other things, then make sure you get subscribed to the channel and meet us all here next week, where we will be covering the fuel side of this no start condition.